These islands we call home have a rich and varied history stretching back thousands of years. But hidden under the ground and underwater are some amazing treasures just waiting to be found.
Wow!
So each year, all across the country, archaeologists dig, dive, and explore their way down.
Oh, this is brilliant.
Searching for fresh discoveries.
And it is completely intact.
Revealing traces of ancient cultures.
This shoe is 2,803 years old.
Oh, wow.
And unearthing fascinating artefacts.
Oh, that's a nice thing. What is it?
I've never seen anything quite like it in my career.
Every dig adds new pieces to the ever-growing archaeological jigsaw.
That's so cool, isn't it?
That is the epic story of our islands. This year, I visit digs in some extraordinary locations.
The ceiling just got a bit lower.
And I call on the help of a trio of expert investigators.
It's quite difficult to find any other evidence of things that just leave a mark in the archaeology.
This is a really powerful document because we're getting to hear the voices that we don't usually hear.
Who delve deeper to answer the questions raised by the finds.
Is all of this already recorded in books?
There was none of this in a book anywhere.
Finally, the archaeologists bring their most amazing discoveries into our tent.
Astonishing.
For up-close analysis.
Genuinely rewriting history. Welcome to Digging for Britain. This time, I'm travelling through central Britain to reveal the area's most intriguing archaeological finds.
A dig under Leicester Cathedral reveals clues to a lost shrine.
How fantastic to have found this sacred object in this place, which has stayed a sacred place through the centuries.
In Winchester, archaeologists unearthing an Anglo-Saxon cemetery make a spectacular discovery.
It was a very sunny day, and I found this object, which is the color gold. Oh, my gosh, what is that?
I track down a forgotten nunnery on the banks of the River Thames.
My personal favourite is this domed thimble.
Is that medieval?
Yeah, 1400 to 1500.
And on Nubia unearths 500-year-old evidence of the actual women who lived there.
There are problems in this house, as 6 nuns have run away.
Wow, phenomenal number.
First, we travel to RAF Alenbury, near the town of Huntingdon, 15 miles south of Peterborough. Built in 1938 for use by RAF Bomber Command and expanded to become a US Air Force base in 1942, RAF Alenbury remained operational until 30 years ago.
Now, this World War II airbase is being redeveloped, and that's giving archaeologists a precious chance to look beneath the runways.
This nuclear bunker is known as Dragon Mountain. It was built at the height of the Cold War and used as a base for US spy operations.
This was built at a time when people were genuinely fearing that they were facing the end of civilization. And in a way, that's what the archaeologists are looking at here as well, a time of incredibly heightened anxiety many centuries ago.
This dig takes us right back to one of the most tumultuous periods in Britain's history, the end of the Roman period. With the Roman road, Ermine Street, and the Roman town of Godmanchester nearby, the team from Oxford Archaeology expected to find some Roman activity. But when they started digging, they found far more than they'd anticipated. Lead archaeologist Chris Thatcher is giving me a tour of this baffling dig.
So, Chris, what have you got?
We've got bits of midline age archaeology, tiny bits of early Roman archaeology, and then a gap, and then this flurry of activity in the very, very late Roman period.
Oh, and that's such an interesting time.
Yeah, that's it. It's so rare to find such a concentrated burst of activity during that time, certainly in like a rural context where we are now.
OK, can we have a look at what's coming out of the trenches then?
The Romans occupied Britain from 43 CE until the collapse of the Western Empire some 400 years later. Affluent communities left behind a wealth of archaeological evidence, from urban centres to rural villa complexes. But poorer communities left far fewer traces. But as footage captured by the archaeologists shows, this site is a rare exception.
It's just amazing, isn't it? It's absolutely wonderful. Look at that. How many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a beautiful thing.
One of the most striking features of the site is a large, dark ditch, easily visible.
So I can see this massive feature coming through here, but why is it here?
Well, we think it's a large enclosure or boundary ditch, and it goes all the way round and encloses this area down to the bottom of the site.
So it's like a moat going around the outside of it.
Yeah.
And then ditches are places where things fall in and you tend to get fines. So have you had anything out of these ditches?
Yeah, round here we found a lot of late Roman coins.
Do we think people were living inside this enclosure through into that late Roman period?
That's the interesting thing on the site. We don't think they were actually living here, but they are coming here and the material is being left here. But what they're leaving over there is what's got us really excited.
Let's have a look.
Chris and the team have recovered over 100 kilograms of pottery from this relatively small site, far beyond what would be expected as waste from a rural settlement. As well as the sheer volume, it's the remarkable condition and position of the pottery that makes it so unusual.
So we've got some smashed up pots here.
Exactly, we've got 3 different deposits of pots. They are smashed, but they're entire vessels.
Yeah.
All late Roman, and they're all deposited in this top layer, this top sort of 30, 40 centimetres of the ditch.
Surely this is just rubbish. This is people just chucking stuff in a ditch.
If it was rubbish, you'd expect people just to tip their rubbish in. We can see from the stratigraphy that they're actually cutting into the top of the ditch, these pits, to actually bury individual vessels.
Oh, OK. So they're not just using the existing ditch and, I mean, throwing these pots in or placing these pots in.
Yeah.
They're actually digging down and then burying them.
Yes, and that's the thing. It's that sort of cumulative evidence, that build-up, which is making us go, this isn't random, this isn't rubbish disposal, there's something deliberate.
Yeah. A ritual was part and parcel of people's daily lives.
Yeah.
But you also have to not leap to that being the conclusion.
So it's not what we would normally expect going on here.
Yeah.
While Chris is showing me these curious finds, over in the next trench, archaeologist Steve has just unearthed another pot.
Oh, Steve, what have you got there?
Hi, Alice. It's a complete Neem Valley ware pot.
That's beautiful. Is it complete and intact?
Well, at the moment, yes, I think so. It's just about to come out now.
Yeah.
1,000 odd years.
Oh, wow. Here it comes. Oh, wow, look at that. That's lovely.
Wow, look at that. So that's the base of it there. That's the top. It's all intact.
Can I have a look? Oh, Steve, that is beautiful. And it is completely intact. Can I clear off some of this
by all
clay?
means, yeah.
So this is late Roman?
Yes, possibly late 4th century.
So this is the first time that somebody's held this in their hands for...
Since they put it in the ground.
1,600 years ago.
Yeah.
It just seems odd. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're just throwing rubbish away.
No, and that's what we need to find out.
And this completely intact pot isn't the first that the team have found. Project officer Paddy Lambert has assembled a collection of the best finds to show me.
It's a flagon.
Isn't that a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of pottery?
Yep, and I think the decoration is really nice at first glance, but look a little bit closer and you can see that it's actually quite poorly executed.
This bit here looks like it's gone a bit awry.
Exactly.
It's been smudged.
Yeah. So it's actually quite a common thing to find this level of decoration in the later Roman period. It seems to symbolise almost exactly what the Roman province of Britannia was going through. It's that economic trial and tribulation at this period.
It's a lovely vessel.
You might have noticed, of course, that it's missing its head. The spout here and the handle has been chopped off in one fluid motion.
It hasn't just broken?
No, it's been chopped. You can tell it because it's very smooth, so it's been in the ground like that for a very long time.
That's curious,
It is very curious.
So you think this is not just rubbish, you think there's something much more thoughtful going on?
Exactly. That leads us neatly on to the rest of the assemblage, which is also a very curious mix of bits.
What about that there?
That is a snake ring. So it's a ring, literally to look like a snake. If you just put it on your hand like that.
Do you think it's been bent?
Yes,
Because I don't think you would have been able to get it on your finger.
It's been
like
compressed.
That.
Interesting that you say that it's actually been bent or it's rather too small.
Yeah.
This kind of thing is very, very common on this site, and they do suggest that they are miniature symbols of other objects. For example, if you come from a rural society that can't afford to buy these actual jewelleries, then perhaps there is an industry going on where you can buy these things
miniature versions.
To give, exactly, to donate.
Ah, OK. You're really starting to build up this idea, aren't you, Paddy, that you think these objects have been deliberately placed here for a reason?
We're finding early brooches. The pin itself suggests that it has been deposited, it's not broken. Usually when you find brooches, the pin is missing, so it suggests they've fallen off.
Yeah.
When you find the pin, it suggests that they've taken it off, put it in and placed it as well. We don't have that much evidence for agriculture, but we do have tools that have been deposited that are to do with agriculture.
So is that a scythe?
There is, yes, very similar.
Yeah.
It's called a reaping hook. It's a small version. There's a little wooden handle. If you just turn it over, you can see the socket where the wooden handle would have been. So
a hand scythe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is, again, deposited whole.
And that's
so it's
coming
not
out
been,
of the same ditch?
It's coming out of the same feature, yeah.
Yeah.
As a collective, none of these are in isolation are actually that interesting. As an assemblage, they are really revealing.
So you're reaching for this interpretation that these objects have been placed in these ditches in a ritual way.
Precisely.
Paddy believes that these buried objects could have been offerings to the gods in a time of great upheaval and anxiety.
Between 350 and 400 AD, the Roman Empire is in bad way. It's in dire straits, and especially in Britain. The agricultural economy has shrunk. The military economy has shrunk. The army have gone. There is various incursions all over, from the Picts to the Saxons. These people are embroiled in this, and it does seem like the only time you would see this level of curation, this level of votive offering, of deposition, is disruption or fear.
So you're seeing this fragment of material culture that we can see here as evidence of a society in disarray and a sense of anxiety.
Exactly. I think it's a microcosm of the story of Roman Britain.
There's something really eerie about this site, and it's not just the hangars. I think the archaeology here is fascinating. And as much as I want to believe that what's ending up in the ditch is just their rubbish, it seems that there's more to it. And the archaeologists believe that what we've got here is a response to this tumultuous period of history as the Roman period in Britain comes to an end. And I just wonder what was in the mind of the person who placed this pot in the ditch 1,600 years ago and then walked away.
After the fragmenting of the Western Roman Empire, there's evidence of migration into Britain, and new kingdoms begin to form. One of the most powerful and enigmatic Anglo-Saxon kingdoms lay right in the centre. It was known as Mercia.
We've got a chronic shortage of houses in Britain. We desperately need to build more. And archaeologists work hand in hand with the construction industry. They monitor new developments as they happen and record any archaeology which comes to light, often leading to completely unexpected discoveries.
Our next dig takes us to New Alresford, just north of the River Itchen and 7 miles from Winchester. Before a new housing development could be built on the edge of the town, archaeologists were called in to investigate some circular crop marks, first identified in a 1960s aerial photograph. Early exploratory trenches revealed them to be 3 Bronze Age ring ditches, which would have encircled ancient burial mounds. But that's not all the archaeologists discovered, because dug into and around the ring ditches were over 100 shallow graves. Trainee archaeologist George is part of the team investigating.
In this 5 metre or so area, I've had 4 skeletons, which we didn't know were here. Quite exciting.
What the team have stumbled on is a previously unknown Anglo-Saxon cemetery, dating to the early medieval period.
Is that one here?
Paul McCulloch from Pre-Construct Archaeology is leading the dig.
A lot of our graves are much shallower than they would have actually been when they were made in the Anglo-Saxon period. And that shallowness has come about because of intense agriculture. So we can see some of the plough scars, as we call them, that they've cut into the Bronze Age barrows and they've cut into the Anglo-Saxon graves as well. So we can expect many of the graves to have simply been eroded, and you will lose the evidence of the Anglo-Saxon population that was here if you don't do something about it.
The early Anglo-Saxons seem to have been mainly pagan. But from the end of the 6th century, missionaries were sent from Italy to convert their rulers to Orthodox Christianity and bring them under the sway of Rome once again. The evidence here is leading the team to suspect that this cemetery could be the resting place of some of the earliest Christian Anglo-Saxons in the Itchen Valley.
The burials appear to be in quite organised rows, in graves that had been well cut. These attributes suggest that it was reasonably well managed. Most of them are laid east to west with the head to the west, and they're buried on their back.
Paul and his team, including archaeologist Lara, want to find out more about this community, how they lived and how they died. The well-preserved human remains may hold some clues.
So this is a child, we're thinking under 10 years old. The easiest way to tell is the bones aren't fully fused. So this is the top bit of the vertebra, it's not fused onto the rest of it yet. And it's the same with the fingers and the toes. They're a lot bittier than you would expect with adults.
A much bigger grave is being excavated by archaeologist Liam.
At the moment, we've got the top of what looks like a male skull. And he's in a lot better condition than most of the skulls that actually get on the site. So we've got the brow just here, and there's his nose. Well, that's where his nose would have been. And then I imagine he's got quite long legs. So this is one of our larger graves. It's a lot wider than most of the other graves.
The cemetery population is quite mixed, and there's young and old. It doesn't represent a catastrophic event brought about by disease or something like that. We're looking at a long-lived cemetery that represents a community that lived and farmed here on the downland. We don't know where they were living, but we certainly know where they were putting their dead.
Although the organisation of the cemetery suggests Christian burial practice, over half of the burials have been found to contain grave goods, something more common in pagan funerary rites. Perhaps this is a clue that the religious beliefs of the community were in flux.
The bones come up the red to white, and then you've got this dark, metallic, rusty tinge. So I discovered this small iron blade laying on top of the right upper arm and the vertebrae. So the handle, which would have been attached, has obviously dissolved and disappeared over time, but the metal blade itself is still intact. So whether it's been laid on top of them after burial or whether it was within their clothing, it's difficult to say.
So the most common finds we've made in the graves are knives. One of our graves had a pair of shears in it, but I think these very simple knives were your everyday pocket knife. Some of the earlier Anglo-Saxon cemeteries that we're familiar with in the Itchen Valley, the burials there were often accompanied by a considerable range of objects, from pottery vessels to spearheads to shields and jewellery as well. Whereas in the 7th century, there seems to be less objects buried with the dead, perhaps in reflection of some kind of change in burial practice that might be related to religious belief.
And one find provides another tantalising clue that some of those buried here could have been Christian. The spectacular discovery was made by archaeologist Giovanni.
It was a very sunny day, and I found this object, which is the color gold. It was yellow. I found, oh my gosh, what is there? Then I tried to clean up with the brush, and I found out that it was a pendant, golden pendant. So this is the first time that someone found something gold in here. It was amazing. It's difficult to express the feelings, but you could see from my face.
I really wanted to get a close look at this artefact and understand what it could mean. So I've invited Paul and find specialist Marit Gamester to bring this incredible object to the tent.
Here is the pendant. It's an extraordinary object, isn't it, Marit?
It's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
Can I pick it up?
You can pick it up.
Thank you very much.
Gold is very stable.
Look at that.
It is
What a lovely thing.
Yeah.
So that is lighter than I expected, but it still has some weight to it, doesn't it?
It could have potentially been part of a necklace or strung between pins.
Yeah.
And had beads and other lovely things.
I mean, you can see that it's suspended, can't you?
Yeah, that's a suspension loop, and it's got some lovely filigree work along the edge.
So this is with gold wires being laid on the surface.
Yeah, and sort of welded to the surface.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose what you notice about this is that it's got this cross-like design on it.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, a cross is one way of decorating a circle.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily Christian, but do you think it could be Christian symbolism in this case?
I think it likely is, because it is a period that sees the whole, you know, development of Christianity in the Anglo-Saxon area.
Paul, this is an interesting site. What's the archaeology telling you about these kind of themes of continuity and discontinuity in the landscape? What do you think is going on here?
These populations in the 7th century have one foot in the ancient world, which they inherited from Roman Britain, and one foot in early medieval England. So,
are we expecting these people to have been Christian?
You know, we have this suggestive pendant, and we have burial practice which would be familiar as being ostensibly Christian.
It's a really interesting time.
I think it's
very
interesting
interesting period.
When you look at funerary archaeology, religion doesn't clearly map onto it.
Yeah.
No.
So people might continue doing what they've done before, what previous generations did for a while, and then start to modify it. So it could be symbolising Christianity as well as symbolising wealth and status.
Yeah, yeah.
As Christianity was adopted as an official religion in more parts of Britain, it became more visible in the landscape. From modest chapels to towering cathedrals, from priories to bishops' palaces. Some are still standing and still used, but even those that have been reduced to ruins still have stories to tell. Our next dig takes us to the north bank of the River Thames, 4 miles southeast of Windsor, to Ankerwick. On the opposite bank of the river is an area of meadow called Runnymede. It was here that King John agreed to the Magna Carta in an attempt to make peace with powerful rebel barons. In 1215, during the medieval period.
On the south bank over there, that's where the Magna Carta was signed between the king and the barons, and of course the Archbishop is there orchestrating it all. It's a very male story. Over on the north bank, we've got a more hidden history involving women.
Archaeologists have been drawn to investigate medieval monasteries for 200 years, but nunneries, which are often smaller and more modest, tend to have been overlooked.
Well, now archaeologists are getting the opportunity to explore a Benedictine nunnery here in the historic landscape of Ankerwick.
This dig by National Trust archaeologists and volunteers began last summer.
So what we're looking at here is our first confirmed piece of medieval pottery. So this is our first real tangible piece of the nuns living on the site here at Ankerwick.
In this exploratory slot here, we've been picking out some rather large pieces of roof tile.
It's floor tile, absolutely stunning.
Not every find is as old as the nunnery.
Oh, it's a recorder! It's a part of a recorder!
Archaeologist James Brown is leading this dig.
Hello. Hello, hello.
Hi Alice, welcome to Ankerwick. Lovely to have you on site.
Lovely to be here. So, what are we actually looking at here? What are the ruins that we can see above the ground there?
We've never been quite sure whether this is part of a romantic folly built on the site around 1800.
Right.
But our investigations are starting to show that actually this is a surviving part of the medieval nunnery that was on the site.
And how much do we know historically about the nunnery? Is there a lot of information?
So we know the nunnery was found in 1160,
Yeah.
but what we are really lacking is any maps or plans of how those buildings interlock with each other.
So there's lots of genuine questions here then. You really don't know what this nunnery looked like, and this is a chance to find out.
Yeah, little avenues to the life of the nuns here, how they were living and surviving and thriving in this landscape, really giving a bit of a voice to the female nuns that are here that they haven't had before.
After the dissolution, the remains of Ankerwick Priory were converted into a grand Tudor mansion, which was almost completely demolished in the 19th century. As dig diary footage shows, National Trust diggers have already unearthed the original nunnery's cloister and church.
So on day one of this dig, there was indications that there was the wall of the cloisters just here.
Given the size of it, the width of it, it's not supporting a massive structure. So we think it is definitely the cloister itself.
The corner of the cloister is clearly visible in an aerial survey. Now the team are hunting for the rest of the monastic complex.
Well, this is a very exciting trench.
Huge amount going on here. Probably the best person to actually talk to is Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Yeah. So we've got a bit of everything in our trench at the moment. The top part of this wall here, we have this nasty 1940s concrete.
Yeah.
odd bits of brick in, but then we have these beautiful medieval stones.
That's lovely.
And we do actually have some wood here still in situ.
Yeah.
And then right at the bottom there, we have a chalk foundation layer, which is actually steeping away from the wall.
Yeah.
And these steps here, which we believe are from the Tudor house, leading down to a cellar.
So the phases of this, and we've got a Tudor house being built into the remains of the priory.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at.
Is that part medieval too?
So this is really exciting, actually. This lovely big stone down here is our threshold. This is the doorway.
Yeah.
So we've actually got a vertical door jamb into the corner of the trench here.
Yeah.
And you almost get that kind of idea. It has been worn by people stepping on that lovely kind of rotated edge to it.
This looks like the doorway into the nuns' refectory, where they would have eaten their meals. Geophysics revealing buried archaeology is helping James to make sense of the site.
So geophysics for the site, very busy. I dig last year straight down onto our medieval cloister here, that rectangle. And that really allowed us to then start talking about the site with a bit more confidence in where the church would be in relation to that cloister, and this remaining structure here being our refectory.
The team are slowly beginning to piece together what the nunnery would have looked like, with a chapel, cloister, living quarters and refectory. While the small finds emerging from the trenches provide us with a more personal connection to the women who lived here. Assistant archaeologist Harry Farmer
Harry, hi.
Hello, Alice.
has gathered some of the best finds to show me.
My personal favourite is this domed thimble.
Is that medieval?
Yeah, so it's cast copper alloy.
Yeah.
And it's circa 1400 to 1500.
OK. I mean, there must have been quite a lot of sewing going on. Everything was hand sewn.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't that lovely?
Yeah, yeah,
Was
really
that a
nice.
bead there?
Yeah. When this first came out, we thought it was metal, but it's actually glass.
Is it?
So, yeah, really just dainty piece, and it's got that nice kind of linear dot marking on it, decoration.
Yeah.
But yeah, glass ovid bead with a finely drilled hole through the middle, so can't definitively say what that is.
Could be a rosary bead, could
It
it?
looks very rosary-like to me.
Yeah. Is that a coin?
Yeah, so it's a Henry III cut halfpenny, and that's dated 1250 to 1272.
And is that cut up to use?
Yeah, you go to the shop and you've only got this penny, but it only costs you a fraction of that amount, so you just snip it in half and use half of it. But what's really nice about this, before it was broken in the excavation, had evidence of being folded quite slowly over time by hand. And there is some study in archaeology and from historical sources that coins are often, as an act of devotion, folded over during prayer.
So it could have some kind of spiritual meaning, but this is a place which is economic as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. I mean, there's a lot of brokering and trade and you know, daily business going on here.
And what have you got here? You've got some pins.
Yeah, so I'll take this one because this is a kind of hand cast. Really, really dainty.
I mean, these are these objects that you just think, it's amazing that they've survived, and then it's incredible that they've been picked up archaeologically as well.
So, yeah, essentially, not a hairpin, because too dainty for that, just a dress pin. So for different parts of your
Or a
clothing.
veil,
Yeah, or part of the habit.
Such a fine, fragile thing, isn't it, to have survived all that time?
Yeah.
I see, it's quite poignant in a way, isn't it? Because we don't really hear from the women themselves, and then all we've got are these tiny, tiny traces of them.
This dig is revealing so many forgotten details about this medieval nunnery. But there's another source of information, rare historical records which reveal the tensions, scandals and politics that took place within its walls. Historian Onyeka Nubia is tracking down those records 150 miles away in Lincoln.
This is Lincoln Cathedral. When it was consecrated in 1092, it became the mother church of one of the largest dioceses in England. Bishops here administratively managed an area that ran from the Humber to the Thames. This included over 2,000 parishes. One of the most southerly the parish of Wraysbury included Ankerwick. Each parish was regularly visited by the Bishop of Lincoln or one of his representatives. I've come to the Lincolnshire Archives to meet with Dr. Nicholas Bennett, who has access to records of these visits. One of these documents dates to the same period as the thimble and pin found on the site.
Luckily and magically almost, we have a very detailed source for a visitation of Ankerwick Priory in October 1441.
So what kinds of things does it tell us?
At the time of the visitation, there were 7 nuns, but it also tells us that over the last few years, this number has been reduced down to 7 because 6 nuns have run away.
Wow, that's phenomenal number.
There are all sorts of reasons why nuns were in monasteries in the first place. Some went voluntarily, some were put there by their families at quite a young age, and they might have thought after a while that this was not the life for them. So there are problems in this house, and that's what Bishop Annick is going to be faced with. The bishop would arrive and the whole convent will be assembled, and they were all allowed to have their say on their own in confidence before the bishop. So we're actually peering into this confidential document, you know, nearly 600 years later.
And so this is a powerful document because it contains many of the voices from this nunnery that we haven't heard from. What do they actually say?
Right, well, the prioress, of course, by virtue of her position, goes first. She's called Clemence Medford, and it says up here that the prioress says that the nuns, from time to time, are moved against her at the slightest breeze, ex leni vento. So the littlest problem, they'll be complaining.
It seems such an evocative statement here, that they sort of moved against me by any sort of slight breeze, that it's almost likely to be her exact words that are paraphrased.
It could well be. It's a very evocative phrase, as you say.
Yes.
Then she goes on to say, they bibunt by habit and take potationes, drinks, post completorium after compline. And the compline was the last service of the day. In the evening, they're supposed to then go to bed.
And by suggesting that they're at fault, she would then be implying, don't listen to what they've got to say.
Yeah.
We've got other voices?
Yes, absolutely. Now, the next one is the sub-prioress, who's the prioress's deputy, who seems from this to be a fairly loyal deputy to her mistress. And Isabel Standen says, all is well, omnia bene. Well, we'll see afterwards that omnia was not bene in this case. Yeah. Then we get a very different character, Marjorie Kirkby, who's clearly very critical. She starts off by pointing out that under the rule of the current prioress, the houses and buildings of the priory have been let fall into ruin. She has lost vestments, she has lost silver plate, she has lost books. She then goes on to say the prioress is actually running the monastery herself. She's not allowing anyone a share in the administration.
Right. We're getting to see different views from these various women.
Yes.
Some in authority and power and some not.
Exactly. And we go on to this next page here, where she says that the prioress wears golden rings of great cost, plurimum sumptuosis, with divers precious stones, but that the ordinary nuns, in contrast to these precious stones, are actually being deprived of the ordinary habits, and they're actually going around in threadbare outfits.
So the suggestion is that she's using the money that should have been used for the uniforms to buy herself costly attire and equipment.
Yes. And in fact, the young nuns, the sort of 13-year-old and younger, are supposed to be taught. They are supposed to have a teacher, a governess, in reading and in singing. This is one of the great advantages for a young woman in the 15th century to actually have an education by going into a nunnery. But this has not been provided. And it's, I think, significant that within 2 years after this visitation, the prioress, Clemence Medford, has resigned, and the new prioress who's appointed is none other than Marjorie Kirkby.
Wow.
So she's clearly, I think, someone who's keen to see the monastery being run properly.
So no sympathy for the prioress?
Not really. Well, would you, after you've been going around in tatters for years? We want something better.
Okay.
This document is a fascinating and rare insight into the lives of just a few of the women who lived at Ankerwick. Along with the archaeology, is helping to piece together a history which for 400 years has been hidden.
The Midlands have always been a hub of industry and trade. Medieval trading centres were connected by a network of rivers, canals, and roads. And along those routes were inns and taverns where travellers could find refreshment and rest their weary heads. Our next dig takes us to the East Midlands, to the town of Northampton. There were settlements on the banks of the River Nene going right back to the Neolithic. By the medieval period, Northampton had developed into an important town, though racked by wars and plague. In 1675, the Great Fire of Northampton blazed through the town, destroying most of the timber-framed buildings. The town was rebuilt, but much of medieval Northampton had been wiped out.
The archaeology here in Northampton is very complicated. It's a palimpsest, layers upon layers upon layers through the centuries. There are some places where you can come and see the past, as here with this beautiful Norman church of St. Peter's. And in fact, there's archaeology all around here. So excavations to the east of the church uncovered a large Anglo-Saxon hall. And now archaeologists are getting an opportunity to investigate here to the west, where a pub is being renovated, a pub with a very long history.
The old Black Lion pub called Last Orders in 2018, and now a £3 million conservation project is set to restore this Grade 2 listed building to its former glory. Which means archaeologists are getting the unique opportunity to see beneath the standing remains. This site is being run by Derek Roberts and his team from Pre-Develop Archaeology.
Well, you've made quite a mess.
We have.
Why are you making a mess?
Well, we're here on the behest of the church's Conservation Trust, who have leased the property to turn it back into a pub.
So it was a pub originally?
Pub originally. First documented, I think, around 1720.
OK.
And then as we go down, we're finding stuff that's showing us that there's been some servicing of people all the way through.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here looks like quite an interesting story above ground. Has that always been evident?
No. When we first got here, there was render and paint all over it. And as we see it, many 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th century alterations and additions as we look around it. And you're left with lovely little pockets or islands of archaeology standing up in the facade there.
Down in the trench, the team are starting to reveal the footprint of the original coaching inn. By the 18th century, coaching inns had become a staple along Britain's roads. Travellers arriving by horse-drawn coach would stop off for food, beer and lodgings. Many of these inns are still in use today as pubs.
So this is the entrance here, is it?
Yes, I think if you look at these places, they're pretty standard. So you'd want to be able to come in, turn your carts around, horses go up to the stables, they're fed and watered, and so are the people coming in with them.
Yeah.
The 18th century inn fits neatly into the footprint shown on a 1720 map. But for earlier periods, the team are relying on the work of a famous early 17th century mapmaker, John Speed.
If we look down here, look, We've got something that sort of resembles the church that we know to be on the right-hand side of us
That
beyond
little
our
one
building.
there,
That
yeah.
little one there, look at that. We're trying to place ourselves with that little thing there.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little detail. It's just an indication that there was a building here.
No, that's right.
It really helps us to understand, you know, where we are in terms of this main road coming in. And so this building, whatever it is right there, isn't it, on that main road? It's one of the first buildings that you'd see.
That's right.
Yeah.
This early map gives only a vague hint that there was something here, right next to the church and at the entrance to the town, predating the 1720 inn. And the team are uncovering evidence of even earlier activity.
So what have we got down here then, Derek? This looks like it's burned.
Yes, we have a horseshoe-shaped possible bread oven, really.
Right, OK. Yeah, you can see the bricks around the outside there. They're really burnt, aren't they?
Really
on that
burnt.
inner
I mean,
surface?
heavily burnt.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, not as burnt as we'd think from an industrial process, maybe, but hot enough that that's going through some action in a day.
And what about by you there? Because it looks like there's another bit of curved wall just there.
I'm sitting in another bread oven, so we can see part of that wall curling around here.
Yeah.
And if we look a little bit harder, we can see an earlier one underneath. This is many iterations of that same little bread oven going on.
And domestic, or do you think it's a bit bigger than that?
You'd have to think that some of these are actually going and functioning at the same time. So I think this is just a little bit higher than subsistence and maybe showing us it may be a commercial enterprise. Industry, I don't think so, but definitely commercial.
Yeah, OK, so it may be that before there was a coaching in here, there was some kind of bakery?
By looking at the maps, there's a thoroughfare, and if there's trade passing through, they're going to want something. They may be serving the local community.
It's exciting to find evidence of what was here before the coaching inn and before records begin. And the small finds the team have turned up can help to give us a date.
We have this sort of material here, which we'll call Cistercian type, whether or not that is Cistercian ware, but that's 15th, 16th.
And this is on top of those ovens?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we have this sort of stuff pre the Cistercian ware. The Cistercian ware is quite treacly coloured glaze, and there's often said that there's a change over from that because people are getting away from this Tudor-type green ware that we have. So we know we're sitting probably 1350, 1400, something like that.
We're getting a bit earlier.
Getting a bit earlier.
So what's the earliest pottery here?
So we've got Stamford ware, classic bone-coloured, and we have that almost transparent glaze on it, look, just like that.
Lovely.
That one's got some slight darker green speckling in it. I'd be happy to put in that about 1150, really.
Right, OK.
The medieval pottery, going back as early as the 12th century, shows us that this site has been in use for nearly 1,000 years, perhaps as a bakery first before it became an inn, just inside the gate of the town.
And then this is going to be made back into a pub again, so it's going to be restored to that function.
That's right. It'll be lovely pointing along here rather than painted over again.
Yeah.
And what are they going to do? They're going to feed and water the people that are passing by again.
Yeah. What I really love about this site is the way that the archaeology under the ground ties in with what still exists above ground. And you're still going to be able to see that. So it's not going to be covered with render and plaster. You'll be able to go to this pub and see that beautiful stonework on show. And once again, it will be going back to its former glory as an inn.
Redevelopment of our modern cities gives us a precious opportunity to dig down. Urban archaeology helps us to understand how these places have grown and changed over time. Our next dig takes us to the largest city in the East Midlands, Leicester. The discovery of the remains of Richard III under a car park in 2012 by a team from the University of Leicester was one of the most headline-grabbing archaeological events of recent times. But Leicester's been important since the Iron Age, when it was a regional capital, and it developed into a thriving Roman town.
3 years after he was discovered, Richard III was interred here at Leicester Cathedral. Cue droves of modern pilgrims, tourists, flocking to see him. But I am not here to see Richard III. I've hot-footed it to Leicester because I've heard about an astonishing archaeological discovery just here, outside the cathedral.
A discovery which predates Richard III by more than a millennium, taking us back to the Roman period. A multi-million-pound restoration project at Leicester Cathedral is giving archaeologists a rare chance to dig right beside it. Leading the team is Matt Morris from the University of Leicester.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
This is an enormous trench to be digging right next to the cathedral. I mean, that's a brave thing to do.
It could be, yes. I mean, one of the fears was we didn't want to collapse the cathedral into the excavation area, of course.
No, Leicester Cathedral itself is really interesting, isn't it? Because it was only made into a cathedral relatively recently.
1927, but what people tend to forget is it was a medieval church first. It was just a parish church that was uplifted to cathedral status.
Yeah, so it's been here a long time.
The earliest we know of it by name is 1220, but it might be much older than that. And we've got so little early history for the church, including when it was founded. This excavation may be one of those rare opportunities to answer that question.
The team have been digging here for 14 months, uncovering a huge medieval cemetery from the parish church they knew existed here. But now, beneath these graves, they're finding signs of earlier activity.
What we found is a Roman coin of Emperor Vespasian. He reigned from 69 to 79 AD.
So I found this Roman bone head. It's people find.
There's always been this folklore story that there was a Roman temple under the church. And when the Victorians were rebuilding the tower, they found Roman walls and instantly lent to the conclusion that that was conclusive proof of a temple.
Why do they think it was a temple?
I don't know, but we know there's Roman buildings under it. That's
Yeah.
all. It could just be a house.
Yeah, yeah. There's something Roman.
There's something Roman
yeah.
under there.
You've got down to these Roman levels.
We're at Roman and we've got something really exciting to show you.
Where is it?
Come this way.
So is that all Roman wall? Wow.
That is all Roman wall coming through from the back there, up to here, turning and going off this way.
Fantastic. And what's that kind of pinkish, is it plaster on it?
So this thin layer of pink mortar is called opus signinum, and it's full of crushed up Roman tile, and that would have acted as a waterproof layer on the wall. What this probably is damp proofing for a room that is under the ground level.
Oh.
It's the remains of a Roman cellar.
Yeah.
It may not be fully subterranean, but it's at least partially subterranean.
OK.
The 3D model of the trench shows that this Roman cellar is 4 metres square. It appears to have had nothing above it, but would have been surrounded by Roman yard surfaces at ground level and have been accessed by a sunken passageway. But there is a small clue that this cellar might have been something more than just a storage room.
This is painted wall plaster. This is the material that is coming off this wall.
So this is a posh cellar. This isn't just a damp, dank cellar.
You don't just paint your walls for a storage cellar, not with this. I mean, you've got 3 different colours going on here with a stripe down the middle, so you've got an intricate wall painting here. It's a function room that happens to be semi-subterranean.
Yeah.
A coin found alongside this piece of plaster tells us when the cellar was in use.
This came from the bottom of the rubble on the cellar floor.
Right.
You can just about make out the emperor's head on here, and this is Tetricus, and we know he's emperor in 273 AD.
Brilliant.
So we know our cellar can't have been demolished any earlier than that.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? It just pins it down.
It really does.
And what do you think the function of this space was?
Well, our best find is still to come. It's behind you.
A piece of carved stone.
And not just any carved stone. This looks like the base of a Roman altar.
That is fantastic.
Could this be evidence of the legendary Roman temple?
So where did this come from?
It came from just here.
Right, OK.
But unfortunately, what we can see here is this is one of the piles for the new Heritage Learning Centre.
Yeah.
And it's drilled
yeah.
down 12 metres and has sadly gone through one end of the altar where it's snapped off.
Usually, excavation happens before any construction work starts. But here, the builders have had to drive piles into the ground first in order to make the site safe for the archaeologists.
It's so unfortunate, and yet, so these were completely necessary. You couldn't have done this dig.
We couldn't have done it
had these piles not gone in first.
Yeah.
So we can see these fragments here. It could be that we're looking at the front of the altar down there. There could be an inscription on these pieces.
There could be. We know we found it face down, and this large chunk here would have been the bit from here.
OK. Should we have a go at getting this out, then?
Yeah. If I get my trowel under here, and you come in from that side, and what we'll try and do is between trowel and hand, we'll try and lift the whole lot and put it down in here.
And there could be an inscription
And then
on this side.
once we've got it in there, we can have a look underneath it.
OK.
That's it. Brilliant. So it's that bit and this bit down here that might have something on.
Can't see anything here. It looks quite clean.
Much to my disappointment, there is no inscription to be seen.
How would it have been used, then? Would it have been something that offerings might have been placed on?
Looking at the size of it then, it would have probably been about this high.
Yeah.
And it's what we'd call a portable altar. It's an easily movable object.
Is it the kind of object that someone might have had in their house, or is it more likely to be associated with a different type of building?
It's something that would more likely be in a private setting, I think, than a grand temple.
But we have got a private shrine, then.
And a sunken featured room.
Yeah.
And there's lots of Roman cults that do have elements of subterranean worship within their practices. And it actually raises some important questions about the use of this particular site throughout Leicester's history. And there's always been this story of a temple under the cathedral. And we're now moved to a point where, OK, we haven't perhaps got a grand temple, but we have got a place of spiritual significance. We've got an altar base from the Roman period. And as far as we know, it's Leicester's first Roman altar as well.
Really?
It is, yeah.
How fantastic to have found this sacred object in this place, which has stayed being a sacred place through the centuries.
It's an incredible find.
This extraordinary discovery shows that the medieval church, which would eventually become Leicester Cathedral, was built very close to a Roman religious shrine, in use until at least the late 3rd century. It's a reminder of the depths of history in our cities and of changing religious beliefs through time.